If rich countries are so successful, why does poverty keep showing up? Not as a starving child in a headline, but as background noise in daily life. It's the check engine light you've been ignoring for 3 weeks because the mechanic costs too much. It's the knot in your stomach when you open your banking app. It's a life that looks normal on the outside, but feels incredibly fragile on the inside. We have more technology than ever, more wealth on paper than ever. According to the World Bank, high-income countries produce over 60% of global GDP with less than 20% of the world's population. And still, millions of people live one small accident away from panic. This is not a moral story. It is not a contradiction, it is a clue. Because poverty in rich countries is not a failure of growth, it is a structural outcome of how modern economies allocate risk, labor, and stability. Part 1. Redefining poverty. When people hear the word poverty, they usually picture unemployment. That picture is outdated. In rich countries, the new face of poverty is working, sometimes working a lot. In the United States, data consistently shows that the majority of people below the poverty line live in households with at least one working adult. The problem isn't just the paycheck, it is the pattern. Hours change week to week. Income comes in lumps, not lines. Then the real enemy appears: volatility. A flu means a missed shift. A missed shift means a late bill. A late bill means a $35 overdraft fee. Suddenly, a small inconvenience becomes a financial event. Poverty today is less about how much you earn, and more about how often your life gets disrupted. A stable life can survive a bad month. An unstable life cannot survive a bad Tuesday. This is why poverty persists in places that are, on average, rich. Because the average doesn't pay your rent on Friday, your cash flow does. Part 2. Why rich economies need cheap, flexible time. Here is the uncomfortable part. Prosperous economies do not only produce wealth, they produce convenience. Think about the last time you ordered dinner on a rainy night. You got your food in 30 minutes. That magic happened because someone else's schedule had to be disrupted so yours could remain comfortable. Rich economies have become service economies, and service economies run on flexible time. 24-hour retail, same-day delivery, a clean hotel room by 3 p.m. All of this requires a massive layer of labor whose time stays cheap and replaceable. This isn't a conspiracy, it is a cost structure. If that delivery driver had a stable salary, paid sick leave, and predictable 9 to 5 hours, the convenience model would break. Prices would rise, service would slow down. So the system optimizes for flexibility. The result is a large group of people kept close to the edge. Not starving, just never secure. Modern work in the service sector isn't designed to build a life. It is designed to fill a time slot. And time slots do not come with stability. Part 3. Safety nets reduce hunger, not fragility. At this point, you might say, but rich countries have safety nets. That is true, and it matters. Public transfers prevent absolute hunger. They prevent visible disaster. But preventing collapse is not the same as creating stability. A safety net catches you after you fall. Stability is a floor you can stand on. Many welfare systems are built to keep people afloat, not to help them build a boat. Support is often conditional, temporary, and buried in paperwork. It's enough to stop you from drowning. Rarely enough to help you reach dry land. So people survive, but they do not stabilize, they patch. They juggle, they postpone. And when a person is always patching, they cannot invest. Not in education, not in training, not even in rest. This is the modern condition of poverty. You are not dying, but you are never safe. Part 4. Mobility must exist, but can't scale. Rich countries love stories of mobility. The scholarship kid. The immigrant success story. These stories are real, and they are important. But here is the structural catch. Mobility must exist, but it cannot be the norm. Why? Because the economy still needs people to do the low-pay, high-flexibility work. Those jobs don't vanish just because someone got a promotion. If everyone moved up the ladder, two things would happen. First, labor shortages at the bottom would spike prices instantly. Second, the upper tiers would get crowded, and the ladder would just get longer. So mobility becomes a promise in rhetoric, and a constraint in math. A small percentage moving up proves the system is open. A large percentage moving up would crash the cost structure. Part 5. Why poverty is less visible. If poverty persists, why does it feel invisible? Because poverty didn't disappear, it was reorganized. In the past, poverty was visible deprivation. You saw it on the street. Today, poverty is well dressed. It hides behind subscriptions and credit limits. A smartphone does not mean financial security. A new iPhone on a 36-month payment plan isn't wealth, it's a bill. A leased car isn't success, it's a liability. Debt makes poverty quieter. Buy now, pay later, makes risk stretch across time. Work has changed, too. Apps have replaced managers. Contracts have replaced employment. Risk has moved from the company to the individual. And when risk is individualized, poverty looks like a personal failure. Not a structural outcome. But the outcome is still there, just harder to see. Part 6. The Shock Absorber. Now we can say the quiet part out loud. In rich economies, poverty functions as a shock absorber. When demand falls, who loses hours first? Not the executives, the hourly workers. When inflation rises, who feels it immediately? Not the asset owners, the households buying groceries week to week. When the system needs efficiency, where does the volatility go? It goes into people's lives. These households absorb the economic shocks through delayed repairs, smaller meals, and second jobs. They're the human buffer stock. And because they absorb the shock, the system stays stable. Not perfectly, but stable enough to keep running. This is not a moral claim, it is an accounting claim. Someone holds the risk, and it is rarely the person with the power to avoid it. So why does poverty persist in rich countries? Not because we lack resources. It persists because modern economies are efficient at the top, and flexible at the bottom. Because stability is expensive. And someone has to live without it for the machine to stay smooth. Understanding this is not about being pessimistic, it is about clarity. If you treat poverty as a personal defect, you will always be confused by how durable it is. If you see it as risk allocation, it starts to make sense. Rich countries didn't eliminate poverty. They engineered it into a quieter, more functional shape. The system is designed to be efficient, not kind. But understanding how the machine works is the first step to not getting crushed by it. Stay curious, stay sharp.